Welcome to the Arkitex Essentials NewsDrive video training. We'll start the training process in a moment, but first let's briefly mention the purpose and intent of this important video training material. First, this Arkitex Essentials NewsDrive video training is designed to help you learn how to operate the NewsDrive as an integrated component of the Essentials workflow system. Second, at your company, the NewsDrive itself is installed as a complete functional device ready for basic operation in a production environment. The training video emphasizes how to operate, modify, or add new settings to the NewsDrive by utilizing the existing configuration. Much more information about NewsDrive's operation and configuration are available to you in both the user guide found in PDF format on the Essentials software DVD, as well as an extensive online help system built right into the NewsDrive itself. We strongly encourage you to take advantage of both of these information resources. Finally, it's very important to understand that this video training does not replace the NewsDrive portion of any formal classroom instruction available from AGFA, such as the Advanced Arkitex Essentials or Advanced Director classroom training programs.
This Arkitex NewsDrive video training covers the following topics. The NewsDrive itself is a component of the Arkitex Essentials workflow system, NewsDrive's main window interface and tools, how to add scan folders as well as change scan folder settings, and how to make and change job templates. You'll be shown how to set up the device configuration and modify certain system settings. You'll learn the basic user input and output functions and how to operate the NewsDrive in a production environment. Finally, you'll see how to back up critical NewsDrive files, enabling you to save the NewsDrive configuration. Next, you'll see an overview of the data path and NewsDrive's role in an Arkitex Essentials workflow system, where the NewsDrive is capturing raster data and sending a completed image to a CTP engine for making plates.
Arkitex Essentials starts by receiving fully composed page files from the front end, such as your company's editorial or classified system. Essentials can provide a virtual shared printer as the entry point, but it is more common for Essentials to simply provide a shared hot folder into which the front end writes the completed page. Arkitex Essentials prepares and processes the page for specific publication based upon the page's file name. The page is digitally imposed and made available for soft proofing in the Arkitex web client. After viewing the soft proof, the operator may release the page for output. Soft proofing, approval, and other functions of the Arkitex web client are covered in detail in a different module of the Arkitex Essentials video training. Upon release, the fully imposed page or pages is sent to the Arkitex NewsDrive, where it is buffered as raster data prior to output to the Advantage CTP engine. Once all the data necessary to image a plate is received at NewsDrive, the NewsDrive begins the output process at the Advantage CTP. From there, the exposed plate is passed to the online plate processor, where the latent image is developed into a usable image ready for the press. Next, we'll show you NewsDrive's main user interface and point out its controls and display features. Here you see NewsDrive's main user interface window. Let's take a look at it. These two buttons on the top left allow you to add and delete scan folders. The next button allows you to change the settings for a selected scan folder. This icon indicates the operational status of the Advantage CTP engine. The button in the upper right corner opens NewsDrive's online help screens at any time, and the button below that allows you to configure NewsDrive's optional supervisor mode. This open area is where you'll see the plate jobs as they arrive and are processed by NewsDrive. The way in which the jobs are displayed is selectable with the three buttons indicated here. They are the Job or Icon view, the Detail Job view, and lastly, the Detail File View button. You'll want to try these different views to determine which is best for your operation. The buttons in the lower row include one that opens NewsDrive's application log. Another opens the device settings window, and the third provides system settings control. We'll review these setting controls a little later in this video. This area here displays NewsDrive's scan folders as currently configured. This large animated button to the left pauses and releases NewsDrive's operation. It works like a toggle in that clicking it multiple times stops or starts the NewsDrive with each click. Next, from the main window, see how clicking the Add Folder button allows you to create a new scan folder. The window that appears contains all the settings necessary to configure a unique scan folder. For now, I'll just type in a new name and confirm the Add Folder function by clicking the large green checkmark button. See, my new folder is now shown in the main tree list. I can just as easily delete an unwanted or obsolete scan folder by highlighting it in this tree and selecting the Delete Folder button. You'll probably not do this very often. Let's choose an existing scan folder and talk a little more about what can be done to modify the settings. In this window, the various controls allow you to do such things as alter the folder's priority setting, change the scan path where NewsDrive is constantly polling for incoming jobs, enable the export path where NewsDrive optionally writes output as a TIFF file, select a job template to control exactly how NewsDrive will position and image the raster data on the plate, as well as numerous other controls detailed in the online help or user guide. When you have finished making these or other modifications, be sure to confirm the changes. Back on the main window, this area at the top contains icons to tell us the status of the CTP device and any job that is currently being output. These green heartbeat waves indicate the CTP engine is communicating with the NewsDrive. Also, from the main window, NewsDrive's online help is always available by clicking the Help button. This browser-based help system is filled with the latest information about the operation and configuration of NewsDrive. It is carefully constructed and logically presented in a virtual user guide format. You'll want to become familiar with the online help as you explore the functions of NewsDrive. The Supervisor Mode button allows you to protect NewsDrive's configuration from accidental or unauthorized modification. Enabling it is accomplished by simply entering a password. But be careful. Once you enable Supervisor Mode, you must know the password to make any configuration changes from that point on. Next, let's take a look at how you can change the way active jobs are displayed in the main viewing area. This first button selects the job or icon view. Here each plate appears as a large icon. The next button selects the detailed job view. These same jobs are now listed in a tabular format with more detail for each one. The final button is the detailed file view, which is similar to the detailed job view, but each job is listed with its incoming file name in addition to its job name. This System Settings button exposes a window that lets you modify many of NewsDrive's internal parameters, paths, and system defaults. We'll cover this in more detail in a later lesson. The Device Setting button provides controls for setting up exactly what type of CTP or CTF device is connected to NewsDrive and how NewsDrive communicates with it. Do not alter any parameter here without first consulting with an AGFA service engineer. The Log button opens NewsDrive's application log, where you'll find a detailed list of messages and status notations about NewsDrive's recent production activity. Moving the cursor over the Arkitex logo allows you the tooltip to display the current NewsDrive software version. Knowing this is important should you at any time call AGFA technical support for assistance. Finally, this large animated button is used to stop and start the NewsDrive application itself. When it's grayed out, NewsDrive is paused. Clicking it once starts the application. Clicking it again stops it, and so forth, prompting for confirmation each time. In the next section, you'll see NewsDrive's screen as it appears while it is actually outputting an active job to the Advantage. Here's the NewsDrive main window with 3 completed jobs and 1 in actual output process. In the Job Detail window, it's the bottom row designated by the small icon that looks like an Advantage. Also notice the Advantage status icon at the top center is green and in a ready state. This area is called the Job Progress Bar, and in actual use is animated as the plate is imaging. This entire view is very similar to what you'll see on NewsDrive's monitor during normal output operation. This next slide shows you what you would see on the NewsDrive monitor if for any reason the CTP engine is offline while NewsDrive attempts to send a job for output. Notice the CTP status icon is red, The heartbeat wave is static, and the job progress bar has no animation fill. This symptom could be caused by various conditions, but generally means there is a communication problem between the NewsDrive and its CTP engine. The NewsDrive log will often provide help with troubleshooting the problem if needed. In this next section, we'll cover details about scan folder settings. Here you'll learn how to add or change scan folder settings, enable and disable plate output in the folder settings, assign a template to a folder, and how to enable or disable both folder input and output. Let's say we want to add a new scan folder to NewsDrive. Before you can do that, NewsDrive must be taken offline from the Essentials workflow system. This is done simply by clicking the large animated button on the display's left side, like this. Now with NewsDrive offline, the next step is to create a folder in the Windows file system that will be monitored or polled for incoming jobs. I'll go to Windows Explorer and create one called Demo. Now back at NewsDrive, click the Add Folder button to open the Folder Settings window. In the Folder Settings window, enter the name you want to assign to this new scan folder. Then just below, in the Scan Path dialog, I'm going to browse to the Windows folder I just created and select it. This NewsDrive scan folder is now associated with the new Windows hot folder. The error path shown below is the default, and I'll leave it where it is. For this folder, I want NewsDrive to export a TIFF file as part of its output process. Activate the option by checking the box and then browsing to the desired output path so NewsDrive knows where to send the finished TIFF file. This option is useful if I want to capture my final output images for archiving or reuse in another system. One very important part of the folder settings dialog is the selection of a job template to handle all the incoming jobs that arrive in the scan folder. Click the Browse button. It'll take you to where all the templates are stored and select the appropriate one. The filter control that you see here, when it's set up, tells NewsDrive to process incoming files only if they match a defined name pattern. The star means to process everything. These character boxes here, under the Purge column, will tell NewsDrive to automatically purge files after a certain number of days. 0 means don't purge at all. The checkbox that's adjacent to the icon that looks like a CTP machine is usually checked, indicating output is enabled for all jobs arriving in this folder. This demo mode that I'm running in shows that this box is grayed out, but the jobs will be output as TIFF files sent to the location configured in the export path above. The folder's priority is set up here. The valid ranges from 255 for the highest down to 1 for the lowest priority. Entering a 0 here puts the folder in a hold state. The large area down below labeled as the job matching table is not covered here, but information about it is presented in the user guide and on the help screens. Also, it will be covered in detail in AGFA's Advanced Director or Essentials classroom training programs. As always, when any changes are made to the folder settings window, be sure to confirm them. Another way to write changes to a scan folder is to copy the settings from an existing known good folder to a newly created one. For instance, I'm going to go to Windows and create a folder called Demo 2. Now back in NewsDrive, I'm going to click the Add New Folder button again and type in the name of this new folder to be Demo 2. And I'll confirm it, and I forgot to specify a valid output, so I'll just check the export path to send this off as TIFF files. Now you can see in the tree the new scan folder called Demo 2. The next step is to select a working scan folder whose settings I want to apply to my new one. I'm going to choose the tab folder, right-click, and say Copy Folder Settings. Now, I'm going to go select my new Demo 2, right-click again, and this time say Paste Folder Settings. Now, if I look at my new Demo 2 folder with the Change Settings window, every parameter that was part of the tab has now been copied here. I have the opportunity to change whatever is necessary for this unique new scan folder. I'll change the scan path to match the Windows folder that I want to associate with my new scan folder. select Demo 2 again here. And I might want to also change to a different job template. So I'll browse out to the Job Templates area and select a different template. Now we have a new scan folder that is similar to the original scan folder named Tab, which itself is still active and waiting for new jobs. Again, if I don't need a scan folder, it can be deleted from the tree by selecting it and clicking the Delete Scan Folder button. NewsDrive will ask for confirmation each time you click the Delete button, just to make sure. Now let's select one of the scan folders and look at some active jobs that it currently contains. Over here on the right side on the main viewing area, you can see several jobs listed. I'm going to pick one and right-click on it. Now you can see in this pop-up menu, I've got several operational things I can do. For instance, I can redo the job, I can delete it, or I can do things like change the default copy count. This next section of the training is going to cover information about job templates. This portion of the video will help you understand the role and importance of job templates. Job templates control the way the CTP engine actually images the raster data onto the plate. In the template, you'll specify such important parameters as the size and orientation of the image, its resolution, margins, cropping, and so forth, as well as the inclusion of any additional data not part of the image, such as plate furniture or annotation. To work on a job template, we first need to open the Template Editor window. To do this, first go to the Folder Settings window for any active scan folder. Once it's opened, note the name of the default folder configured for this scan folder, as this is the same template you'll see when you click this big button to open the Template Editor, which looks like this. The first pull down in the upper left here specifies the type of plate, say a broadsheet. Below that, indicate the number of identical copies of the plate you need for these jobs from a single NewsDrive input. These two radio buttons determine the final image is to be of positive or negative polarity. Click the blue AB button and choose the correct orientation for output. Notice this choice also provides wrong or right reading capability. The Units pull-down allows you to choose the measurement system you want to use while constructing this template, and the step entry box below that indicates the number of these units to apply each time you might click an increase or decrease arrow anywhere else in the controls of this editor. The media type and media profile selections are values that must correspond to settings that were configured in your Advantage CTP engine during its setup and installation. Down here in the Layer Settings controls, now it's time to select the output resolution for any job using this template. In the Fast W and Slow H boxes, enter the actual width and height dimension of the plate itself. These fast percent and slow percent values are used to scale the output for each direction as a percentage of the original raster data dimensions. The offset allows you to start the imaging at some point other than the configured start of image for this particular Advantage engine. It's not a common practice, but it can be used if needed. In the File Settings area, some critical parameters are the width and height of the incoming page itself. These are entered right here. If you need some margin space on the top or left of the incoming page, enter a positive value here under Fast X or Slow Y. Conversely, to crop the left or top of the incoming image, enter a crop value in either or both of these cells. Next, I'm going to give you a little demonstration of how some of these controls affect changes on the positioning of the image data on the plate. While I do so, watch the larger of the two grid areas in the diagram below move as I enter non-zero values into the FastX and SlowY file offset boxes. This effectively moves the image down and to the right by a value equal to that entered in the box. If we need to move the image up and to the left, you can do that by entering numbers in the crop fields. The value entered here effectively moves the image off the plate to the left or off the plate to the top. In the text list to the left, these two entries correspond to the two components of this job. The first is labeled POS1 or Position 1 and represents the incoming page image from the Essentials workflow system. NewsDrive can add other elements to each job by using this template's capacity for adding components here. Click the Add button, and then name and select the type of element from the pull-down. There are 4 types of elements. The drop-in type is reserved for the element corresponding to the incoming page from Essentials. Local is reserved for any static image or furniture that needs to be added by NewsDrive, such as a step wedge or a registration mark. Local data can be used over and over again on the same template and on several different templates. Blank elements are used to erase areas of the plate or to remove any unwanted portion of the incoming raster data. Finally, any element tagged as annotation will be seen as text on the plate image and contains information unique to the plate, such as its file name, an output time and date stamp, color identifier, and so on. More information about annotation is available in the user guide or in the online help system. To manipulate size or the XY coordinate position of any single element on the plate, first click the element's name in the list to focus the editor controls on that single element. Then enter the actual dimensions or position coordinates in the associated entry boxes. Once you've made all the required changes to the template, click the Save button to save the template with a new name or with the old name, effectively overriding the old template data with the new configuration. Each time you close the template editor window, NewsDrive prompts you to apply the new template settings as the default template for this scan folder. You must choose either yes or no. In this portion of the NewsDrive video training, we'll cover some aspects of the Systems Setting utility. This tool gives you the opportunity to customize the way NewsDrive operates, make modifications to such things as data paths, and access to some default settings and advanced controls. To access the system settings, it is necessary to first pause the NewsDrive application by clicking the main button here. Then move the mouse to the System Setting button and click it once to open the utility. Here's the System Setting window. As you can see, there are numerous controls and parameters accessible in this space. Let's look at a few of them. At the top in the area labeled Application Folders, the pull-down list provides selection of the data paths used by the NewsDrive application. When it was installed, NewsDrive created a subfolder in the main application path that corresponds to each of these selections. The default locations are always adequate for NewsDrive's function, but if you want to move any portion to another location, you must do so by choosing the component from the pull-down and then browsing to the new path in the space to the right. Any valid path in the Windows file system is okay to use, including over the network, but before you do so, we advise you carefully consider each should you decide to alter the default. The rest of the settings you see here affect the operation and behavior of the NewsDrive in some specific ways. We'll cover only a few of them and remind you that more details about each can be found in the user guide or in the online help screens. The first one, labeled Scan Interval in Seconds, tells NewsDrive how often to poll the Windows folders associated with NewsDrive scan folders when it's looking for a new job to process. The default is 2 seconds and is usually adequate. You can determine how some of these other values impact NewsDrive's behavior by what the label says. For instance, ignore read-only files means NewsDrive will do exactly that in the event a file arrives in any scan folder with its read-only attributes set. These next two blanks labeled Job Status Hold and Archive File Hold work together and provide a finite time window during which jobs may be re-output from the NewsDrive itself without going back to the Essentials workflow application and resending a page. To make it practical, be sure to set the values the same for these two fields, but please note that one is factored in minutes while the other is factored in hours. You'll need to do the math to make the time durations match each other. The remaining controls and parameters provide ways to fine-tune NewsDrive's function and response. It's not very likely that you'll need to change these. Nevertheless, you can learn much more about these and all the settings by consulting the user guide as well as clicking on the Help button and searching through the online help screens for more information. Just as with the folder settings window covered earlier, be sure to click the green checkmark button when you're ready to close the System Settings utility. This confirms and writes all your carefully entered changes. While we're here at the main screen again, be advised that you can stop and close the NewsDrive application like any other Windows program by clicking the red Close Application button in the upper right corner. Relaunching NewsDrive restarts the application. One notable characteristic to remember is that when NewsDrive starts, it will always restart in the same mode it was in when the application was closed. Or in other words, if the application was paused when you closed it last, it will open in a paused state. If it was not paused, it will reopen in the actively scanning condition with the main application button in its animated state. In the next section of the training, we'll cover the user operations that give you full control of NewsDrive's production processes and features. Some of the most essential features you'll use involve controlling input and output of jobs. At NewsDrive, you can selectively disable or enable both input and output of all jobs at each scan folder. This is accomplished by right-clicking a scan folder in the tree display and then selecting the appropriate action from the pop-up menu. We'll actually do this in just a moment, but first understand that by input, we're referring to the NewsDrive's regular polling of a scan folder during which it finds newly arrived jobs to process. Stopping the action is called disabling scan, and doing so puts a red X in the folder icon to remind you it is currently not picking up new jobs. In this state, any job that had arrived previously would continue to output normally. Conversely, you can disable the output of a job with an action called Hold Folder. The folder icon turns purple as seen in the lower illustration. In this instance, new jobs will be detected and processed by NewsDrive, but no plates will be made until the folder is released. Be advised it is also possible to right-click an individual job in NewsDrive's main viewing area and perform such functions as redo it a selectable number of times, abort it, or delete it from NewsDrive altogether. Here in NewsDrive's main window, I'm right-clicking a scan folder and choosing Stop Scanning from the pop-up menu. This prevents any new job that may arrive in this folder from being detected and processed by NewsDrive. While you can't see this on your screen, I'm sending a new job into the Tab Scan folder. It is there, but NewsDrive continues to ignore it until I once again right-click the scan folder and select Enable Scanning. Immediately, the job is detected, added to the jobs window, and processed for output. As you see, its display icon changes for each process and output step. During actual output, you'll see the blue progress bar indicator move across the job status bar in the upper right, and finally the job icon changes to the green check mark indicating successful output. Next, I'll disable just the output function of this lower scan folder and demonstrate its behavior. Right-click the folder and this time choose Hold Folder to block the folder's output function. The folder color changes to purple as you see here. When a new job is sent to the folder, it is immediately detected and pre-processed, ready for output, but stops at that point. This job is now ready for output. Let's take a moment and look at the way this job is displayed differently in the job icon view or the job detail view. Notice how the large icon changes to indicate in a quick glance the production state of this job at this moment. To make this job output, right-click the scan folder and release it by selecting Release Folder. Now you can see the job output normally. And again, notice how the job icon changes in the main job area. In this portion of the NewsDrive training, you'll see which files and folders contain the configuration settings and data unique to your NewsDrive installation. After you've configured your NewsDrive, you'll likely want to save these critical data, as doing so will allow you to quickly get back running should your NewsDrive platform crash or if your configuration is accidentally corrupted. There are 2 files in one folder with its contents that are critical to save. They are the environment.xml file, the options.key file, and the folder named Setups with all its contents. The environment.xml file contains all your scan folder settings, system settings, and other critical configuration parameters. The options.key file is your unique password file that corresponds to your NewsDrive dongle. Never change this file in any way, but it is okay and even a good idea to back it up. The folder Setups contains all your job templates that you spent time constructing. You'll definitely want a backup copy of those. Both the files in the folder mentioned earlier are found in the NewsDrive main application folder. Open Windows Explorer and browse to that location. In there, select the Setups folder, then hold down the Control key and select the environment.xml file. Continue to hold the Control key while you scroll the Options key file in the list and select it also. Copy these selected files and folder. Navigate to the Windows file system to a safe location where you can write a copy of these critical files. Many users create a backup copy on a different platform or even a portable storage device, such as a USB RAM drive. Once you have the files and folders safely backed up, the downtime caused by a catastrophic hardware failure or other such event can be greatly reduced by restoring these files to a new NewsDrive installation. Upon doing so, the NewsDrive will be ready to take its place in your production environment with all your custom configuration intact. During this Essentials NewsDrive video training, we have covered the following topics: the NewsDrive's role and function as an integrated component of the Essentials workflow system, NewsDrive's main user interface and the associated controls and tools. You have seen how to use the folder settings controls to add and modify scan folders and their configurations. You've also seen how to create and modify job templates that in turn determine exactly how the raster data is imaged onto the plate medium at the Advantage CTP engine. We spent some time reviewing NewsDrive's System Settings utility. This provides numerous specific parameters that each impact the way NewsDrive works and responds to your input. Then we went over some critical user operational controls, such as how to selectively disable and enable scanning for a given scan folder, or how to remake a plate from the NewsDrive itself. Finally, you were shown which files are critical to your specific NewsDrive configuration and heard suggestions on how they should be backed up and made available should you need to recover the NewsDrive configuration in the future. One last reminder: much more information about the NewsDrive application can be obtained from the user guide found on the Essentials Workflow DVD that came with your system, as well as the online help screens available at any time within the NewsDrive application itself. And formal classroom training covering all portions of the Essentials Workflow system, including NewsDrive, is available from AGFA. Thank you for participating in this Arkitex Essentials NewsDrive video training.